Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume podcast. I am your host, Spencer Williams, and thank you so much for joining me for another special episode. Hey, costume nerds, it's so good to see you all. I hope you're all enjoying your summer vacation or the beginnings of. We over here at the Art of Costume podcast have also been on a little bit of a summer vacation. Elizabeth is out, I'm sure gardening and all those fun things, while Daniel and I actually just got back from Orlando, Florida at Disney World. So we got to explore Epcot, Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom. It was fun. It was obviously aggressively hot, but we had a good time. We had a really good time, but I'm glad to be back talking about all things costume design. We have a great lineup of episodes coming up. I want to announce that Elizabeth will be joining me once again, starting on our episode releasing on July 15th. We will be talking about a film that I have never seen, and I'm sure you're all going to freak out because this film is so much other people's lives. We're going to be talking about Pride and Prejudice, of course, for the big anniversary. So I'm very excited. We're getting into like a period era hot girl summer, which Elizabeth has some good things cooking for us there. So I'm very excited to finally see this movie. Keira Knightley, of course, I'm very excited. But today we are talking about a series that was just released, a second series, and I think we can all agree that as the costume community, we can't stop talking about. We are, of course, talking about Andor Season 2. Before we get into all the good stuff, let's read a little summary, shall we? All right. Andor Season 2 takes place over 4 years, showing the making of leaders Cassian Andor and Mon Mothma, and a burgeoning rebellion poised to take down the Empire, leading directly up to the event scene in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And that is the second season of Andor. We do have an episode about the first season with costume designer Michael Wilkinson. So if you scroll into our catalog, I'm sure you can find it. It was a great conversation, and I'm very excited to say that costume designer Michael Wilkinson is back today to now talk about the second season, and I am just so excited. There's so many great costumes to get into. You know Michael Wilkinson for his incredible lineup of notable works such as Party Monster, 300, Watchmen, Tron Legacy. I believe he co-costume designed. That's a favorite film of mine. Sucker Punch, Twilight Breaking Dawn Parts 1 and 2, American Hustle, Man of Steel. He did basically all of the Zack Snyder films, Justice League, Batman versus Superman, Aladdin, Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Story, for which we actually have an episode about, believe it or not. We did it a couple holidays ago. And of course, Three Body Problem, which was a recent series that was released on Netflix. I do have an interview with Michael Wilkinson about that on theartofcostume.com. It's a read-only article that I hope you'll enjoy. Andor Season 2 was incredible. I mean, just thinking about all the different worlds we got to go to, from Chandrilan and seeing the very traditional wedding costumes that we got to see on Mon Mothma and the rest of the characters, from going to Gorman and seeing that this very traumatic event, but this is a planet that's very much cemented in fashion and incredible fabrics. Then of course getting to see more of Coruscant, which I always love. Of course it's Mon Mothma summer over here, so we talk all about Mon Mothma. So enjoy this conversation with costume designer Michael Wilkinson. We really get into all of it. I also just gotta say that Michael is just such an incredible costume designer and such a great person and such a fun person to talk to. So smart. So I know you're all going to love this interview. After a quick break, I'm so excited to welcome in costume designer Michael Wilkinson.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
Well, I am so excited to welcome back to the Art of Costume podcast our friend, costume designer Michael Wilkinson. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Nice to speak with you again.
Yeah, all the way from Australia. I hear taking a little bit some time off before the next big thing, whatever that might be.
Right?
Great. Well, you're going to need it because I'm sure everyone's talking about Andor right now and everyone wants to talk to you. So I think we should just jump right into it. So the anticipation for this second season has been unreal. And now that the series is out and completed, can we just take a moment to reflect back on the series? I mean, especially seeing this huge positive fan response. People love the show and they love the costumes. Was the past couple weeks been like seeing everyone reacting to the show in real time?
I mean, it's been pretty overwhelming, really, and incredibly gratifying. It's about 5 years since I started working on that Andor. I've done 2 seasons, and the work represents so much hard work by so many people in the
Yeah.
costume department. We averaged on about 90 members at any one given time,
Wow.
between the tailors, the embroiderers, the milliners, the textile artists, the people that sourced fabrics, the people that looked after the actors, the people that ran the office. It was such a mammoth effort. And I think it's something like 20 hours of episodes over the 2 seasons. So that's basically like doing, what, 8 feature films. So
Right.
it was just a
Yeah.
constant stream every day, more and more costumes, more characters. And, we just wanted to make every single one as interesting and as compelling as the fans would like them to be. So it was an amazing, amazing ride.
Right. It's not like there was ever any lull points. I mean, it was just continuously building on itself and getting more and more epic. And even when it might have been, not so much action in a moment, you just knew it was right around the corner building up. So it was very exciting to see. Before we get into the final details of the fine details of season 2, I want to talk about your collaboration with show creator Tony Gilroy. As you began to prepare for season 2, you had already done season 1, now you're getting ready for season 2. What was kind of the expectation for season 2 as you started getting to the scripts? What was those conversations like?
I mean, I think it was pretty much very similar to season 1. We really wanted the characters to be incredibly authentic and grounded. We were treating this as a drama, not just a sort of like a quick action, fun series, but something for adults, something incredibly detailed. And, Tony's characters were very complex and flawed and fascinating. And so for costume designers to look at all of that and to work out how to express all of that in their clothing, it was just an incredible opportunity, let alone, going to 9 different planets, having to really define each of those planets through their clothing and their culture and their costumes. That was incredible. But yeah, we had a couple of rules, like really nothing could just be ornamental, not, just because it looked cool, that wasn't good enough. There really had to be a reason for it, and it had to be something that, showed the audience something about the character and who they were. The choice of the fabrics, the silhouettes, whether it was tight or loose or baggy or out of sumptuous fabrics or very rough fabrics. There was the whole spectrum in Andor, and we really wanted to dive deep into all of those beautiful costume details.
And we're going to break down some of these huge worlds. Some of them I was thinking about you the entire time seeing these episodes. I'm excited to get into it. So I think we should begin with Cassian Andor, who, really is the heart of this series. We've known this character now going on for, almost a decade at this point. When we meet Cassian in this second season, you can feel that there's this newfound confidence with him. Of course, it's dark times, but he's not the newcomer that we met in season 1. Tell me about this arc they really got to show of him that kind of plays out through, the beginning of season 2 going into the finale, which we're going to talk about that separately. But you really kind of see this progression take place in him throughout the series, especially in these disguises that he pulls up. I feel like he really gets his head around what he's supposed to be doing here.
Exactly. He's kind of like halfway on his journey to becoming the amazingly disciplined and committed leader that we see in Rogue One. So at the beginning of season 1, he's a bit of a mess up. He's like, disappointing everyone. He has no discipline. He doesn't really, he's trying to work out what he's doing. at the beginning of season 2, he's on his way. He's starting to be a little bit more disciplined, less of a hothead. He still has a lot to learn. So we see him first actually in an Imperial test pilot suit for the first 3 episodes. And I love that the audaciousness of seeing our, Rebel Alliance hero dressed in an Imperial uniform. It's kind of cool. And I designed something for him that's based on the pilot uniform, but we added this sort of red sort of section to go across the front to sort of let audiences know that it's the test pilot. It's not an actual approved ship or uniform. And then we also then see him hiding out in Coruscant, and he's kind of on the down low there. He's trying to blend into the lower echelons of Coruscant, and so his costumes there go very dark and layered and textural, and could have a much more urban feel to it. Then he goes to Gorman twice on different missions. First as a very stylish costume fashion designer.
We're gonna talk all about that one in a minute. Don't worry.
And then as Ronnie Gouge, a journalist, like a sort of war correspondent journalist. So, and then he goes to he has a mission on Coruscant where he's extracting Mon Mothma from the Senate. So that had to have a much more sort of urban feel that would sort of blend in with the people at the Senate. And then, of course, he ends up in Yavin. So there's a amazing sort of spectrum of costumes for him in season 2. I think he has about 17 different costumes. Each one,
wow.
5 or 6 multiples because of all the stunts and the action and the photo doubles. So that was a big body of work. Just, Team Cassian in the costume department was just, pumping out 24/7, lots of very detailed costumes.
Yeah, you don't even really kind of realize that when you're watching this series too, is just how many disguises he's going through and how many different characters he's actively playing. We're going to come back to, like you mentioned, one of those disguises because it really brought me a lot of joy. I'm very excited to get into that. But first, I want to take a moment to talk about one planet that we got to see toward the beginning, which was Meero. When we meet the Ferrix refugees, such as Bix, they're on a farming community, and I was really fascinated by the textiles and the colors you chose, which helped them really feel like they were a part of this community. So can you talk about those choices that helped make these characters feel like they belong and really blend in, but still have the agricultural element?
Yeah, one of the joys of designing for Andor is just this chance to sort of really define different cultures. And so myself and the production designer, Luke Hull, we talk a lot about how do we define these different places, give them their own palette and textures. We talk about what resources are available to these people, whether it's to build their environments and their housing and their buildings, or to make clothing out of what's available to them, what's important to them as a culture. So when it came to Meero, we really wanted to lean very much into this very kind of human style of clothing, if you will. It's like everything's worn. It's got a beautiful sort of utilitarian workwear vibe to it. Everything's kind of patched and hand stitched and has this very personal quality to it, which was kind of the extreme opposite of anything to do with the Imperial world, which was black and white and tailored and very fastidious and put together and militant. So we was basically thinking, what is the opposite to all of that? So we used a lot of sort of hand detailing and punching of threads and things through the different fabrics to get this sense of things that have been repaired and they've been touched by humans. So that's what we were aiming for the costumes of this agricultural planet.
Yeah, it came through beautifully, and it was really nice to just see some of these warmer tones too, which we don't really get to see so much when it comes to anything Empire related, honestly.
Yeah, totally. I'm a real fan of workwear and utility wear in general. I find it fascinating. So it was a great opportunity to look at, what's the coolest Japanese workwear? What are the most beautiful indigo dyed aprons and, hand stitched, shirts and lovely, it was a really lovely kind of design task.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's head on to probably one of my favorite planets was Gorman. Because it's quite fashion focused. I feel like it's a costume designer's paradise, and I thought of you through every one of these sequences because you being costume designer, I study fashion and costume, so this planet was just right for us to have a conversation about it because it's a planet known for producing its beautiful fabrics, and Andor is disguised as Varian Sky, who's a fashion designer. Honestly, when I saw him, I thought of Karl Lagerfeld, which was make me laugh so much. It's so perfect and great, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do with this character is like, again, the complete polar opposite to what you associate with Cassian's clothing. We wanted something that's very dramatic and it's sort of very dark colors with white highlights, something that is very tailored and urbane and sophisticated, and to really lean into that and have fun with it. So yeah, we did actually look at people like Karl Lagerfeld, which have these kind of iconic fashion designer vibes to it, but we were thinking of a more sort of futuristic off-planet version of that. And so myself and our incredible tailor in our workroom, Rob Sutherland, we created these layers of beautifully tailored, sharp, dramatic suiting for him, all topped up by a very flowing cape, so that when he walked through the streets of Gorman, he had this wonderful flamboyant silhouette. And it was something that Diego really, he was looking forward to it, I think, from the day he read it in the script. And we had fun creating this character for him that he could really have some fun finding a special characterization for this guy, down to all of the accessories, the rings, the tie pins, of course, the visor, to give him this sort of interesting sense of intrigue and self-confidence for making this trip onto Gorman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Diego could wear this to the Met Gala in real life, and it would be 100% believable, and I love it for that. And with the expectation of Gorman being a little fashion focused, what were some of the references you were looking at the creation of the population? Because everyone there kind of has a similar aesthetic, and Cyril settles into community here, and you really got to see him kind of pick up some of that Gorman flair. I'm obsessed with the tie clip that he has. Every time I saw him on screen, I just wanted to pause it and just look at that tie clip. So talk to me about just the population of Gorman.
Yeah, Gorman's an interesting planet because it's a very proud, cultured society. They have a tradition of fine textiles, and it's a site of this sort of very extreme human rights violation by the Empire. The Empire comes in and stamps out this whole culture. So storytelling wise, we needed it to be something that felt intensely, noble, human. The idea of it being squashed and destroyed is a complete horrific one. And so we really we looked into mid-century Europe and centers like Milan and Paris that have this incredible traditions and beautiful way of dressing. It's quite a conservative, traditional way of dressing, but it's something that's done very carefully. We had a very, special palette for them of lots of neutral tones and elegant navies and whites and greens and beautiful fabrics, of course, chosen. It's not necessarily a flamboyant, flashy planet, but it's very considered and noble and refined. And so I think Cyril gets to sort of be influenced by this new world that he's found himself in. And he, in season one, we established that he kind of is quite self-aware about his appearance. And so we like the idea that he would be influenced by it. We see his look changing from sort of, imperial bureaucrat to someone who is exploring, the expressive qualities of clothing and enjoying fine fabrics. We see he buys himself a Gorman trench coat. He sort of wears a beret like the local people. He has a very sharply tailored dark brown woolen overcoat and with a velvet scarf. So he's really kind of enjoying leaning into this beautiful fabrics and enjoying some of the highly aesthetic pleasures of life, which are then tragically crushed by the Empire.
Are you ready to talk about Chandrila? because that could be its own podcast, honestly, if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
So the home planet of Mon Mothma. I mean, even if I saw that on a script, I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be quite a huge couple episodes here. Similar to Gorman, can you talk about diving into the culture of this planet, which is just so very ornate and very detailed, but you can also sense that there's a sense of tradition and a lot of their clothing as well. And you especially see that in the wedding, of course, but there's a similarity in a way that the people Chandrilan dressed, I feel, is just very structured in tradition here on this planet.
Absolutely. You really hit the nail on the head there. We wanted a sense of like an ancient culture that had it was quite a controlled culture, something that was ruled by traditions and rituals, something extremely beautiful and precious, but somewhat, potentially restrictive. And we wanted to do that because, we wanted to create a home world where Mon Mothma would be quite stifled as her inner conflicts are just really rising and they start to overwhelm her. She would more and more find the clothing and the culture really restrictive and something that she needed to break away from until finally in the final scene in Chandrila, the wedding scene where she's at the wedding and she kind of loses herself to try and forget all of her troubles and sort of get swept up into this sort of intoxicating dance. So we wanted to that the scene of the dance kind of defined a lot of the look of the clothing, because I knew I wanted something that would move really beautifully, and create great shapes and sort of almost a sense of beautiful chaos as this sort of almost rave-like dance takes place on Shangri-La. And so the colors that I chose, the fabrics, the pleating, everything had to move and create really wonderful shapes for the camera. So it was, yeah, we looked a lot at Japan, we looked a lot at Korea, but also at lots of interesting, fashion designers that are working at the moment. And I developed a whole lot of incredible we found a place in the UK that did incredible pleating, different types of pleating that had these wonderful textures. We had all of our fabric scouts go out and find the most sumptuous, beautiful fabrics available. So it was, yeah, an incredibly joyful, creative experience designing the Chandrilan costumes. We had about 500 extras to create all of their costumes from scratch too. So that was a huge undertaking in its own. We had a whole section of the workroom that was just continually creating different shapes and different looks for all of these different wedding party guests. Yeah, it was heaven.
Yeah, it really is stunning. And, like we mentioned, we're in Chandrila for a wedding, the marriage of Mon's daughter, Lita. And I read that during the 3-day wedding event alone, Mon goes through 6 different costume changes.
Correct.
That's quite the feat. So take us back to design this lineup for Mon, who I have to say, and I think it says to you the first time we talked, she really is like the costume designer's dream, because she looks incredible in everything. And every single one of these costumes, you see something new and exciting. I can't even tell you which one's my favorite. They're all so stunning.
Oh, thank you, Spencer. I have to say, also collaborating with Genevieve O'Reilly has just been a career highlight. She's an incredibly intelligent and intuitive person, and fittings with her were lengthy and detailed, and we really thought about how the fabrics moved and how they made her feel, a sense of constriction and self-expression. So that was an incredible process to go through. But yeah, at the first 3 episodes, she has about 6 different costumes. We see her when all of the guests are arriving on the planet. So it's sort of kind of like a hostess kind of look for her when she's when she's welcoming everyone. Then later that night, there's a cocktail party. And so she has a reception gown, the blue reception gown, with the pleated shoulder capes. Then the next morning, we see her at breakfast arguing with her husband. So she has an elegant dressing gown for that. Then, as you do in a Chandrilan wedding, you head up on your ritual hike up the mountain to offer your blessings to the gods of Chandrila. And so that was a wonderful scene, one of my favorites, actually, when you see all of these interesting exterior costumes of the family heading up the mountain. And it's an interesting, different look for Mon Mothma. Then what's next? We have the night before we have the wedding. We have a dinner for sort of important guests and family, which is another formal gown. That's the sort of Grecian draped sort of pinkish dress.
Love that one.
And then we have the wedding itself, which is the sort of goldfish, orangey golden pleated dress with the veil that she ends up sort of swirling and dancing in for the final scene in episode 3. So yeah, that's quite a costume lineup. Six gowns, each one had to be more beautiful than the last.
when it's all done, I'm gonna need like a coffee book that's just Mon Mothma's costumes from Andor season 1 and 2, please.
Okay, I'll talk to Lucasfilm. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears and talk about the Imperials for a little bit. I have to say, I'm actually a big Dedra fan because she just has such an attitude, and I find that very relatable. She's feeling quite cranky all the time. And what was exciting about this season, though, is we got to see her outside of work and sort of, take a breather for a minute. But even when she's outside of work, I still feel like she's very structured and buttoned up. She's one of those people where I can't imagine her ever laying down and actually relaxing. And I feel like that shows a lot through her costume. Of course, she looks elegant and beautiful, but you could tell that she's almost like she has a at-home uniform too.
Definitely. I mean, I think this is the first time in Star Wars that we get to see an Imperial officer in a domestic environment, away from work. And so that was as soon as I read that, it kind of blew my mind about, oh my gosh, what does that even look like?
It was quite jarring. I was very excited for that, actually.
Yeah, right. But we really thought that, Dedra's worldview is black and white, whether she's at home or whether she's, at work. So we thought she would bring the same sense of precision and control and discipline to her home looks, even that she would have at work in her uniform. So we looked at, I created some looks for her that were very, we kind of like this razor sharp, tailored vibe for her, that everything had to be as perfect as possible. She has this quite obsessive quality to her. And so the actress Denise Gough was so excited and thrilled to be out of her uniform for a couple of scenes. And so we spent a lot of time creating very specific looks for her that had very thought out geometric detailing. There was some sort of metallic accents and things that gave her this kind of edge to her, but all rendered in sort of blacks and whites, very precise piped details and stitching. So yeah, we really enjoyed getting to the bottom of domestic Dedra.
Right. It felt like seeing, like, I don't know, like the Easter Bunny or something. Like, you don't see that very often. It was very exciting and just interesting from a costume design point of view to really kind of define what that might look like for some of these people where the Empire is their entire life, and Dedra's definitely one of those people.
Yeah, I think she takes her work home with her,
yeah. I would say so.
One of my favorite moments of the scenes of her at home is when her possible future mother-in-law arrives, Edie, and you have everything that Dedra is not, kind of explodes into a very controlled environment. And Edie comes in this insane sort of tangerine caftan sort of muumuu dress that is like everything that Dedra hates. It's probably her least favorite color. It's sort of got these kind of weird detailing on it, and I kind of you could almost feel her brush of distaste as this creature walks into her home environment. So that was fun to play with.
Right. Even in a galaxy far, far away, we're still fighting with our in-laws potentially and getting on our nerves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, okay. I was very excited to see the main antagonist of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, Orson Krennic, reappear, which it's been a long while since we've seen him as well. And when you see Krennic, that means trouble is definitely ahead, and trouble he was. Well, Krennic is a pretty bad guy. I have to say, I've always kind of loved him in his costume, especially like that cape look. He wears it quite elegantly, even though he's very serious. Did you get to reinterpret this costume? Because like I said, it's been almost a decade since we've seen Krennic on screen, aside from some animated series. So how did I'm sure you didn't just have this costume in a box ready to go for you.
Oh, I wish, Spencer. That would have been so lovely. The costume actually didn't exist in the archive, and so
Mm,
we kind of wanted to make it our own, anyway.
right.
And so you're right, we haven't seen him on screen, so we thought we had to really refer to the iconic look that had been established for him sort of straight away. So we got this, we knew who he was, and he works. Ben works the costume so well. He's sort of the way that he walks and uses the cape is so intimidating and extraordinary. But then, so we had to make it from scratch. But then something that was even more fun for me was there's a scene where he goes to a party at sort of a political party on Coruscant, and so I had
Hmm.
to create like an evening dress uniform for him. So I did another version of this costume in completely different fabrics with different detailing. So
Mm,
we made the cape in this beautiful lustrous satiny material, and we added all sorts of detailing, little collar pips and a beautiful cross strap going across his chest with braid, basically like your sort of typical, military evening dress uniform, but the Star
sure.
Wars version of that. So he had his like straight trousers, not the joggers, evening shoes. But yeah, there was something just a little bit glinty and beautiful about this evening version of his uniform. So I hope you get some good shots of that to show people because it's something that I had a lot of enjoyment creating for him.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that too, because it is very much like in our real world when we see, members of the military at evening events where they, they're almost wearing like a dressier version of their uniform too, as like a sign of like very put together and
As one of the things I really like doing on Star Wars too is really leaning into the uniforms. I mean, it's such a fascinating world just in itself, the world of the ISB and all the different various uniforms. Tony makes us go to all sorts of interesting corners of the Imperial universe, different types of uniforms. We had urban combat ISB. We went to a hospital. We had also
mm-hmm.
levels of the ISB that we explored. And so even in the uniforms, there's this wonderful opportunity to be very creative, refer back to sort of real world, what we know of uniforms on planet Earth, but sort of extrapolate and to make it something kind of compelling and interesting in the Star Wars universe.
Right. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment too to like expand on a universe that's been around since the 1970s as well, where you would think that you would know every every trick in this hat, but it just continues to expand and you get to learn more about all these different cultures and as well as like the Empire as well, where you would think it's just uniforms, but it continues to grow, and I think that's one reason why we all love this show so much. Another character who really got to play around with his clothes would, of course, be Luthen Rael, who I imagine is quite a challenge as someone who is, constantly kind of trying to blend into society. He's always looking the part in the gallery. But then when he steps out of his gallery, he's a man on a mission. So he is the master of disguise. He's the one that taught Andor really this trick. So could you talk about finding that balance in Luthen's costumes?
Yeah, it was something I really enjoyed doing these two different versions of Luthen. One who worked at the gallery, he was kind of posing as an antiques expert, and we really wanted to get across the idea of someone warm, someone trustworthy, someone harmless, because he's essentially gathering intel. So he wanted people to feel relaxed, comfortable, ready to share all of their secrets with. And
Hmm.
so that's what we were going with his costumes of this gallery owner, someone that had impeccable style, someone that you would absolutely trust to the end of your days. And so he has these beautiful outfits that are layered out of beautiful tailored elements, waistcoats and sort of overcoats and drapey trousers in different jewel tones, rich accessories and things. So that was one side of him. But then what we call natural Luthen is the spy master. It's the guy that is in the dark, mysterious cloak that I designed for him on the streets of Coruscant, someone that sort of blends in and doesn't really draw focus to themselves. And then we also see him, piloting the Fonder Hallcraft, and that's slightly, and what I wanted to go with for that look is something that sort of spoke of an early Rebel Alliance look. It's slightly military looking, but it also has interesting sort of humanistic detailing and textures and things that sort of, they're not a uniform like the Imperial uniforms. They're much more, they have this kind of wonderful, personal, interesting, expressive quality to it. So that's what I was going with the two different sides of Luthen Rael.
Mm-hmm. And, as you kind of mentioned too about how we're kind of able to dig deeper into a lot of these different cultures like the Empire, I felt like we also got to spend a lot of time in the Senate, which I really appreciated because it's this great big grand thing, but historically in the past, our time in there has always been quite quick. So this time we really got to know a lot of the senators and see the inner workings. So can you talk about this challenge and can we also just shout out the prowess of your crew that was necessary to make some of these large scale scenes happen? Because there was something happening in every corner of your eye when we saw the Senate. You could spend so much time there. So tell me about the Senate and your crew.
Yeah, I agreed. A shout out and kudos to my crew, because the challenge for the Senate was to show the whole spectrum of the Senate life. Not
Mm-hmm.
did we have senators that were from all different corners of the galaxy, different cultures represented by their clothing. We also had people that worked at the Senate, like the sort of more bureaucrat look, the
Sure.
journalists that came to report on the senators. We had the Senate security. We had this kind of whole world, and they all needed very, very specific different costumes. And so myself and my team, created stock costumes for, I think, about 500 extras that we saw at the Senate, of all of
Wow.
these different types of levels. So that means different silhouettes, different fabrics, different color palettes for different planets, for different types of workers. It was really a mammoth effort to get that all together, to create very specific stock, from the fabrics, from the cut, from the makers, to the people that were distressing, to the people that were looking after the actors, dressing them every morning, doing the lineup so I could check them all out and make sure they looked exactly the way they needed to look. It was lots of 5 o'clock starts, at Pinewood Studio. We also shot a lot of the exteriors in Valencia in Spain. So that was working with a
Wow.
whole different team there and getting them on board and getting them engaged in presenting this world in a way that would be as compelling and as exciting as we could make it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I actually am looking forward to getting to rewatch it and just getting to spend some more time in the Senate and pausing and looking at some of the costumes. It was so much fun. Unfortunately for Mon Mothma, the end of her Senate career though was not very fun. She leaves and takes her place as a rebel leader at Yavin, and it's quite the transformation for Mon Mothma. But then again, at the same time, we know that she's slowly transitioning into this character that's been around since the 1980s essentially, so we knew that silhouette was sort of coming, and you really
Yeah.
got to kind of leave the breadcrumbs to show how that's sort of happening. So tell me about ending this series with Mon Mothma and that Yavin look.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's something about what we wanted to create with the Yavin look is something that was very, like, possibly like stripping it right back behind all of the incredible gowns and the richness and the resources of Chandrilan and Coruscant. Who is the real Mon Mothma? And she's a very principled, passionate, believer in the Rebel Alliance. And so I think actually ending on that, where things are stripped back, um, uh, they're much more real and authentic and grounded. I think that was a really interesting place for the character to sort of finish her costume journey. We did want to sort of refer to her look in Rogue One with this sort of cape with the draped chain. First see her in her first scene in Yavin, and then as the episode finishes and we see the final Mon Mothma, even the cape, the sort of regalia comes off, and you just see her as another human being at the camp having breakfast with her cousin, with the people of Yavin, and rolling her sleeves up and becoming a really dedicated campaigner for the Rebel Alliance. So I thought visually it was a really interesting costume journey to make with her.
Yeah. And then finally, the moment we are all kind of waiting for was, how does Cassian Andor become the Andor that we saw in Rogue One all this time ago? And it was quite exciting, honestly. I didn't even realize it was happening until I really kind of took a second. I was like, wait a minute, like this is him. This is who we've been looking forward to see. You brought this whole thing full circle. So just tell me, what was that moment like when you saw him standing on a tarmac, just knowing that the culmination of the 5 years of hard work have come to this moment where we see Cassian Andor become the Andor that we've been waiting for a while?
Yeah, I mean, it was very emotional, really. I think everyone just kind of, when they realized what was going on, what this costume was, everyone just kind of stopped what they were doing and sort of fell silent and, stared. It was really one of those iconic moments. And so it's a costume that Diego looks so great in too. It's the full hero assured look. Of course, it wasn't as easy as just getting it out of the archive. This costume didn't exist anymore in the archive. So we had to create our kind of own interpretation of the costume that we see in Rogue One. So we tweaked, we made it sort of suitable, a little bit more suitable to our story and our environment with that, but also sort of ticking the boxes of all of the details from the original costumes. So yeah, it was one of those stop and take stock kind of moments, seeing Diego stride across the tarmac in this costume.
Right. I just can't even imagine. It's just such a big period on like the greatest sentence to see him there. And that really brings us to the end of talking about Andor, which I can't even believe. So, Michael, this was such a great series and I really enjoyed it. And you and your team did such an incredible job. Now that the whole thing is out, both seasons, what do you hope audiences take away from their experience of watching season 2 and the entire series? What do you hope the audiences take away from seeing it all?
That's a good question. I think for me, I would love them to feel that there's been a lot of intelligent and expansive thinking about world building and storytelling through costumes. I mean, what costume designers do can contribute so much to the story. And I feel like every day I was trying to think about how the look of these costumes could move the story forward, how they could illuminate the characters and show audience different sides to their characters. All of these costumes were made from scratch. There was over 200 cast members. A lot of them had many costumes. There were thousands of extras. All of those costumes were made from scratch from my incredible team. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever have a costume team like this. The conglomerate of all of these different skills, from fabric makers, fabric sourcers, tailors, workroom, accessory makers, armor makers, the people that looked after the actors so beautifully on set and made them feel comfortable. That was really just a once in a career opportunity to have those resources and that incredible tide of humanity behind you. So it was a massive effort, and I really hope that the beauty and complexity of humanity as expressed by all of these huge cast of characters in its full spectrum, can be seen by audience in a compassionate way.
Costume designer Michael Wilkinson, thank you so much for talking with me. We've been doing this now for a couple years now, talking about Andor, and I'm sad it's over, but I'm excited to see what's next, and I hope that we could talk some more when the next thing comes along. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Spence. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for your time.